Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Detroit Lions Review and Preview. My name is David Lubin. So we are going to talk a little bit about last week's loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we've got an upcoming game against the Arizona Cardinals. So first of all, let's talk about last week's loss. So for those of you who watch the show regularly, wow, was I wrong? I said Vegas knows. Vegas didn't know anything last week. The Bucs not only covered, they won the game, and it was a real close game. I have to say I'm not surprised they won because I was actually going to pick them to win last week's game until I saw the spread. The spread was what put me over the edge. I said, okay, Vegas knows. Vegas didn't know. So if there's one thing I cannot stand, it's so irritating when you see a player have a fabulous game the way Aiden Hutchinson had last week. 4.5 sacks in one game. I mean, how often does that ever happen? And yet he did all of that in a loss. It's such a shame. I have seen that over the years, not the first time. I go all the way back to the days of Billy Sims. I remember games where Billy Sims would run for 150, 180 yards. Lions would lose. Same thing with Barry Sanders. He'd have these big games. Lions would still lose. It happens. Not only the Lions, but that's the team I followed. So what a waste, but what a great performance by Aiden Hutchinson. So what happened last week? The reality is that other than Aiden Hutchinson, nobody really was outstanding, and there were some particularly poor performances. So first of all, I'm a big Jared Goff fan, but he's not getting it done so far this year. Now, am I worried? No, I'm not, because I remember last year after the Seattle game, everybody was worried, and then he just picked it up from there. And I do agree with a lot of the talking heads I hear on radio. I think that with so little, with considering how little players play in the preseason now, it's not really that shocking for the offenses to take a little bit more time to get started. So I do think that a lot of it has to do with that. I think Jared Goff is going to be just fine. My big concern with Jared Goff is we don't want a situation like what Miami just faced, where all of a sudden you don't have a quarterback. So I think if he stays healthy and stays upright, let's keep our fingers crossed on that, he's going to be just fine. The receivers last week, in terms of numbers, both St. Brown and Jameson Williams both had, good numbers, solid numbers. Jameson Williams, another solid day. I think that was his second best day as a pro, so he's had his two best days as a pro numbers-wise, I believe. He had 79 yards. I don't think last year he had any more than 79 yards in a game. Could be wrong. Someone could fact check me. St. Brown, he had over 100 yards and 11 catches, so very good. But unfortunately, neither of them or anyone on the Lions really kind of made those red zone plays when they needed them. And of course, we had that debacle at the end of the first half, which ultimately caused the Lions 3 points, so that when they got toward the end of this game, a field goal would have put them ahead. They couldn't go for the field goal because they missed on that, and now there was a 4-point differential. And then they kept, unfortunately, missing on the end zone and missing in the red zone in one way or another. So a couple of things I did like. I always like when the punter throws from punt formation. I think Jack Fox is the first one to do it since I go all the way back to Tom Skladany. I know that's a name that a lot of people don't know, but nevertheless, he used to do that from time to time under Monty Clark's teams. And I don't think he ever missed. I think he was something like 4 for 4 for his career. Fox didn't do it at all last year. All the fake punts were things like runs, or I remember there was one, I think it was against Dallas, that they gave it to someone else and they threw the ball, but Fox threw a nice pass, and then Vacchi made his first career reception out of punt formation, so good for him. And I have a feeling we'll start seeing Vacchi a little bit more involved in the offense as the year goes on. I know that they're very high on him. He did very well in preseason, and I think we're going to see something there. Injuries concern me a little bit. Anzalone is under concussion protocol. Let's hope he can play this week. The good news for that is that the Lions do have a little bit of depth there, so they could get away with maybe a week or two, hopefully. Although they're up against a running quarterback this week in Kyler Murray, so they do need their best guys, but yeah, next man up. The Lions do have some depth at linebacker. Penny Sewell, I know he played last week. Hopefully he can play again this week. And then, of course, we were all just holding our breath about Amon-Ra St. Brown at the end of last week. Amon-Ra St. Brown was just one of those players that the Lions simply cannot afford to lose. At this point, it looks like they're really only 3 receiver deep as it is. I mean, They have St. Brown, they have Williams, who so far is off to a great start, so good for him. And Raymond every so often will pitch in with a play, and then they just don't really have depth. I don't hold out a lot of hope for Tim Patrick. I really don't. So we'll see what happens. As far as the loss, the Lions started with the two teams that they beat in the playoffs last year, so I'm not shocked that they began 1-1. I'm not panicking about it, and I'm really not making any real judgments at this point, one way or another. I do have a bit of a concern with the team that we're playing this week, and hear me out on this one. The Lions, it took everything they had to beat up a beat up Rams team the week before, and it took overtime, and they almost lost to them too. I mean, the Rams had a lead pretty late in the game. The Lions had to tie it up, and then in overtime they took over. Well, the Cardinals last week against that very same Rams team, a Cardinals team that maybe a lot of people were taking too lightly, they had a really easy time. And Kyler Murray, that's probably the best game he's played in quite a while. He's had injury problems, and he came back late last year, and he's starting to really look like Kyler Murray. I mean, what an efficient game last week. He was 17 for 21 with 3 touchdowns and had another 59 on the ground. We know the Lions don't do well with the running quarterback, so we'll see what happens. This is going to be tough. They're not going to be in Ford Field this week, and that's a big home field advantage for them. However, having said that, they did do well on the road last week, so we will wait and see. Marvin Harrison Jr., What a week last week, 4 catches for 130 yards, so he's off to a great start in his career. James Conner has been very solid for them. Hopefully the Lions can at least shut down the run, or at least shut down him. If they can't shut down him and Kyler Murray, going to be a long day. And on defense, a guy named Dennis Garnett, who looks like he was kind of a journeyman player. He actually had 3 sacks last week, but I think a lot of that was because he was playing against backup linemen. So when all is said and done, I cannot predict. I'm going to predict a loss this week. I actually predicted the Lions to go 10-7 at the beginning of the year. From what I'm seeing so far, and I know we got a lot of football to go, I'm not seeing a much better team than that. So I'm going to say that they are not going to be able to overcome that. I'm thinking that they are going to not win this week, and right now I'm leaning towards that they will find a way to finally beat Seattle the week after, because I see a 2-2 start for them, and loosely I kind of thought that's what was going to happen at the beginning of the year anyway. I thought we'd see a 2-2 start. Teams are playing them much tougher. They're getting up for playing the Lions, so we'll see how that goes. So unfortunately, not picking a win this week. So I'm kind of thinking 1-2 as far as the division goes. So far, we got a big surprise in the division. And I think in show 1, I talked about this. You never know in football. So the teams I said I was most concerned about were the Bears and Packers. Well, the Bears so far, Caleb Williams off to a bad start. I'm not ready to write him off yet after just 2 games. Let's give him at least, 15, 20 games. Used to be you had to give a quarterback a couple of years, but it's different times. Having said that, I got to see more Caleb Williams before I make any type of judgment there. And for Green Bay, they're up to Malik Willis. However, they won with Willis, and they didn't win with Love the week before. So football is a crazy game. But who's leading the division? The Vikings at 2-0. Everyone thought that Sam Darnold, who had been a first-pick bust up to this point in his career, all of a sudden he's playing really well. And he's got the Vikings at 2-0. So who knows? We might have a surprise, and it happens in football. But a lot of football to go. I think it's going to be a dogfight to the end. I mean, if you look at week 1 and 2, it's very hard to judge anything. There are teams that you thought would be doing much better. They're like, I'm just thinking offhand. Now, Green Bay is an example. They're 1-1, although they did win last week. I certainly thought Chicago's 1-1, so I guess that's about where we thought they would be. But anyway, we really need to get to about week 6 or 7, and then I think we'll have a better idea on the Lions and just about every team in the league. And then other things start coming into play, injuries, things like that. So anyway, so I'm picking the loss this week. I hope I'm wrong, and I'll talk to you next week.